Wow.
And Ron was in town at the time, and they contacted Ron in Jerusalem, will you come down here to Zedekiah's cave? And so he went down there, and they said 6 men went up this tunnel, and we can't hear from them now. And so he went up the tunnel with a rescue basket and rolled the men into the basket, and they were pulled out one by one. So the Israeli authorities know this is real, but they don't know what to do. You know, at this point, it's a waiting game for them, and it is for us too. It's not for us. God has a timing for this, and it's not for us to force the issue, you know, to try to bring it out. So the Israeli authority, they know it's there.
I find that very interesting because, you know, Ron's first trip down there to find the Ark of the Covenant and to do all of these discoveries, this was before the Indiana Jones movies came out.
Yes.
It's almost as if he was the inspiration for the movies.
I think, you know, in '78, Ron made this statement, and Satan heard it too. And Satan said to Steve Spielberg, let's make a movie about the Ark of the Covenant. That's what I think. Okay, so the bogus story comes out when the real story is coming out. But Ron was a totally genuine man. I had an email from someone there in Middle Tennessee. She said Ron was her anesthetist when she was giving birth, and that Ron had prayed with her beforehand, and when her baby was born, it was stillborn.
I've read the story. It's on your website.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she started screaming. She was so distraught. And then she looked for Ron in the room, and over in the corner was Ron kneeling down, praying for that baby. And then a light appeared in the center of the room.
Now, by the account that's on the website, it sounds like the other doctors didn't see that light, but they knew something was strange.
The doctor did tell her later. The doctor did tell her later that they understood God was in the room.
Huh.
And that baby started crying. That light came on to say, this is not an accident. God is here, and I'm about to do something. And so God listened to Ron. There's not many people that can pray and someone comes back to life. Ron had a genuine connection with God, and he gave God all the credit, though, of course. This is something, you know, I found out through someone contacting me. It's nothing he ever told anybody.
Really? So he didn't relay this? He didn't say anything?
Right, not that I know of. This is something totally new. So the man was genuine. He had an incredible connection with God, and I view him as the most important person I've ever met in my life, that's ever lived during my lifetime, is Ron Wyatt.
So now we're going to get into a little bit later in the second half of the program tonight, Michael's encounter with Ron, and just how he found the discoveries and what got him interested as well.
Sure.
But yeah, I just find that this everywhere you turn about Ron Wyatt, other than what is seen in the media, and the media, strangely enough, has just sort of written him off and they don't talk about him. They scoff.
Yeah.
But he's a genuine guy.
Right. You know, Satan controls the media. You can't expect the evening news to announce, Ron Wyatt has found all these wonderful things. Isn't this exciting? They're never going to say that.
No, there's two obscure stories from CNN and CBS Morning News or something like that from back in the 80s and early 90s. And I can just imagine the guests on the show smirking as they're listening to this going, yeah, okay, well, coming up next, you know.
Yeah, and even the majority of archaeologists, you know, a majority of them don't even believe the Exodus from Egypt ever happened. And yet we're to look to them as being the authority on whether these things are real or not.
Thankfully, you know, the new documentary that has come out, the Patterns of Evidence, has all but quashed those reservations because it's real. I mean, you look at that and it's pretty undeniable.
Yes, and they're working on their second film, which will cover the Red Sea crossing site that Ron found and the Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia that he found.
All of these exciting things that we're going to be talking about in this series. Okay, so, well, stay with us. We are going to break for just a minute here. We'll be back more with Kevin Fish, as Michael always says. Stand with us, and you can continue seeing these programs. There are no corporate sponsors. It's you that makes it happen. So. And and welcome back to the program. Thank you for supporting what we do here on Shabbat Night Live. Now, we are back with our guest, Kevin Fisher, and we're going to talk about some very exciting things. Before, we were talking about Ron Wyatt and what you are doing for Ron now through ArkDiscovery.com. You are the president of Ark Discovery International, and this was a work that started a year after that Ron had died. And so this was a passion of yours that you never got to work with him while he was living, but you have decided to carry his torch.
Sure. I'm just trying to promote, what God has brought out, and we've seen that they're authentic. And so it's very exciting information.
Indeed. And Michael had met Ron Wyatt. This is how Michael got interested in the Red Sea crossing, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
All the classic teachings that Michael Rood has done came from visiting with Ron Wyatt. And he, like you, had visited with Ron Wyatt in person, found him to be a very humble, genuine individual.
Sure.
that it was impossible to doubt that the things that he discovered were real. And that's why Michael is so passionate about it as well. And he met Ron through going to a talk by Henry Groover. And Henry Groover encouraged Michael to go and visit Ron.
Yeah.
And see that he was real. And
Sure.
so I'm glad that you're here, because Michael would be just tickled that you're showing all these things here. Michael has his own collection of brimstone.
Yeah, I know he's been there a lot.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to get into now. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty here. We're going to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, and we're going to talk about something else yet in this next segment of the program. So take it away, Kevin. What can you tell us about Sodom and Gomorrah?
Well, first of all, a lot of people think all the cities are under the south end of the Dead Sea, that you cannot see them.
Okay.
But we're told by Josephus, the traces or shadows of the 5 cities are still to be seen. This was in the 1st century, and the water level has not risen since that time. We should be able to see them also. And so when Ron Wyatt in 1989 was driving along the Dead Sea, the one road along the Dead Sea there that goes through Israel, he saw these light color formations. In the background, you can see Masada in this image. See Masada is much darker. In the foreground, you see the soil is much darker. But in the middle bottom there, going horizontally, you see the ashen remains of Gomorrah.
So that's right on this. I mean, we can see it in this photograph.
Yes,
They didn't disappear, as some people say, into the sea.
And these are ashen formations. These are not just natural sedimentary rock and so forth. And so this is an image up to the north. This is of Admah near Jericho.
Okay.
And again, you see the light color ash.
It's very distinct, isn't it?
Yes, it stands
different.
out. Right. And then it is a soft material compared to what you would see normally in some type of soil. And then here is inside one of the cities. This is probably in Gomorrah. In the distance, you can see some right angles. A sign of, again, man-made construction.
Now, I lived in a province in Canada called Alberta for some time when I was younger, and there was an area there called Drumheller.